Okay, good morning. It is day 31 of making videos discussing day or thought in the life of me as a human with schizophrenia and to improve or to practice being on camera to keep up making sure I do well on camera in life as a life skill. And I'm going to do my little intro on schizophrenia and I said or what I have as schizophrenia. And I came to the realization while writing my book that I am an itty bitty writer. If I was going to describe myself to other people, I describe myself as an itty bitty writer who experiences schizophrenia. It is a reality to be experienced, and much of the experience can be explained by coming into contact with systems and operations using modern or advanced technology. I am just a one time semi activist, and I am now a brain damaged author, and I'm writing a book about surveillance technology in society and psychological operations. And these psychological and operations, surveillance, and technology have programmed my mind into a schizophrenic functioning. I'm actually the recipient of organized political warfare, what NATO calls cognitive war, and what the former chief of Indian intelligence calls neurostrike. This has given me condition characteristic of schizophrenia, which is more an experience with the classified or underworld of reality. Okay, I'll get into what I was going to talk about today. I might shorten up that little intro because it's getting a little long. But if someone comes across the video, I want them to be able to see what I have to say. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to be going down to San Diego for one day. Just a quick visit to visit my niece Ella and my brother and sister-in-law and their family there, and so we're looking forward to that. I think Ella is now what she's like 7, 8 weeks old now, almost, or so, or maybe she's more. I don't even know. October, so October 27th, so 5, 9. Oh, we're looking at more than that, aren't we? All right, so I was discussing I was reading about Henry David Thoreau and in my wolf book, the book about wolves, and it discussed that Henry David Thoreau lived in Massachusetts, and he discussed being really struck by the silence in the natural landscape that he would traverse in Massachusetts after, they had pushed all the nature out of the encompassing area. And most formidably, he was concerned with the lack of wolves, and he thought like it represented uh like a missing piece to the natural element. He wanted to hear the wolves howl, and he used to love hearing the wolves howl, and he didn't hear them anymore, and he thought that was a really sad thing. And the author segues into discussing Yellowstone and how they, for a time, they had eliminated all the wolves of Yellowstone and then had to import wolves from Canada. And so he's going on that. And it made me think about silence and how I actually, like in my day to day life, will enjoy silence because it allows me to read. But even when I enjoyed the silence because it allows me to read, I am struck by the silence and I need a little bit of sound, so I'll put on classical music and I read to the classical music. So there's something about me where it's like I do like sound. So maybe it's because when it's silent in the house, you have the hum of, you don't really get a natural symphony. So you got to replace the natural world with the sound of music. So I don't know what that's about, but anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then at the same time, as I love silence, I do actually need, I like people being around, and I like sound. So I go in between this wanting silence to read, and I mute the TV a lot oftentimes, but I like sound of like people being around, and I like classical music, and I like rock music. I like all kinds of music or whatever, but like when I'm trying to read, I like to do the classical. Okay, so gonna segue here into the fires, and uh, there was an article in the LA Times that came out a couple of days ago saying that the person of interest in the near the fire of West Hills fire, or which was, I guess it was the Kenneth fire. And I've discussed previously how the Kenneth fire could be related to my schizophrenia program. And because I have my experience with the schizophrenic reality, I take all these things with like a different tact than most people. But anyways, the person of interest in the Kenneth fire is a undocumented immigrant who had a blowtorch and was going around the area, and he was caught by a Hollywood actor apparently, which is kind of strange, but that's what happened. And the actor that caught him was a guy from Chicago Fire, which is also kind of interesting, but uh, which is a TV show. Anyways, so this guy had a blowtorch near in the general area of where fires were starting, and which is suspicious. So, they're investigating and kind of come to conclusions. But all right, if you just take it for, if you just go with it and you say, okay, this guy was starting fires with his blowtorch. I don't know how a undocumented immigrant who is also a convicted felon would escape detection of the surveillance grid in our society, and to the point where he's got a blowtorch going into the hills starting fires. Now, if that is the case, then we need better surveillance of our hillsides and communities. But I don't particularly know how the surveillance grid works. I just know that I can't leave my house without being followed by 1,000 people. And so I just wonder how a convicted felon is in the country escaping the surveillance grid. And in my mind, I'm thinking like I don't really believe it. So, but I don't, like I say, I don't know how the surveillance grid works. And then you have to wonder, so like, unless if he was an insider in the surveillance grid and he was part of this shadow surveillance system, then you have to wonder, like, did he think he was going to get caught? Did somebody double cross him? And what was the motive of the person double crossing him, if they did double cross him? And so, and then if you pretty much know and the other event, I tend to think he knew he would get caught if he was starting the fires with that thing, and he was caught by a Chicago Fire movie star or something, or actor, whatever. And so makes me think like if it's hard to imagine he would have a pro-immigrant agenda doing that as an undocumented worker who's almost assuredly going to get caught. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. if he had a pro-immigrant agenda, it seems like a weird tack that you would attack Los Angeles, which is a sanctuary city, and then undermine all that goodwill for immigrants in California. So, and undermine the political leaders which are on your side. So I find that to be suspicious in and of itself. So I guess we'll find out more as these things happen in phases. Anytime you have a big kind of operation, which is basically in this case starting fires to burn down people's homes, is almost like an act of terrorism. So there's strategy probably involved, and I guess we'll find out more as it comes out. Uh, Similarly to this, I'm going to segue here into another thing I wanted to talk about because I talked about Germany in the Iraq War in yesterday's thing and how there was a multifacetation or a delayed aspect to the political vehicle of the Iraq War in reference to Germany. And I've thought this for quite some time, for a long time. It's been a little curious to me how Hitler was being strategic when he supposedly was championing the cause of Aryans in the world, the Aryan race or whatever, and he did it by declaring Aryans supreme rulers of the world, and he picked a fight with literally the whole world in doing that. And it just seems like an odd strategic tact you would take as a leader of supposed race, or what Hitler, he thought he was a leader of a race. And it seems like an odd tact to take, that you would declare yourself supreme ruler of the world and pick a fight with the whole world. And it makes me wonder if, like, the whole Hitler thing, if he was a mole and he was misleading people down a path of doom, and it was a way to undermine Nordic or blonde people in the world because maybe they had a different kind of culture, or like maybe like even if you think about the pagan cultures and things like that. And yeah, so I I just wonder about that, to be honest. And it seems like a way to undermine the Aryan race or the blonde people, or to declare them and do these terrible things in their name. And I often wonder the same thing about Jewish people in Israel and what Benjamin Netanyahu does. And then you have to wonder, like, how much is Big Brother involved, because you have that Big Brother book written in 1948 about 1984 in Orwell. And so, yeah, I just, it's always been curious to me, and I can't say I know exactly what's going on, but there is a guy named Greg Hallett who has written a book about Hitler being a mole, and that's just one book that is written, and maybe that touches on some sort of truth, but I don't know. I'm not saying that Hitler was a British mole or something like Greg Hallett says. I just think that Hitler could have been an agent working a separate angle, but I really don't know. Anyways, but I just think my thoughts on that are very much in line with my thoughts about this potential blowtorch wielding, ICE wanted, uh, ICE wanted convicted felon. And so, yeah, uh, sometimes things seem so sensational and they don't really add up strategically. Like, it doesn't really make sense that they would do that. But people don't always make sense. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop because it's been about 15 minutes. So, thank you for listening. Goodbye.